Here we have a little application that we wrote, right, that allows us to search for movies and then search for details of those movies. And it's built using Angular, right? Now Angular it's a high-level abstraction that allows you to write code, right, using a very strict design pattern, the MVC design pattern, and it forces you to divvy up the various concerns in between views, controllers, and models. Right. Now, underneath that, we have a much we're using a library called Jquery, which is it's a library that allows you to manipulate raw DOM, right, as opposed to using this very high level abstraction layer, right? And it's oftentimes useful to understand what's going underneath, what's happening underneath, right? So let's talk about, let's re-implement this, but using Jquery, okay? All right, so let's do that. So let's in here, right? Let's go into lectures, graduate, and yeah, we never covered Jquery, so let's talk about Jquery here. So Jquery is it's a library that allows you to manipulate the DOM, right, consistently across different browsers, different vendors, different versions of browsers. Okay, so that you don't have to keep track of what particular version of a browser you have, so that you have to manipulate the DOM one way or another depending on the version or the vendor. Okay. So let's implement here. Let's create here an index page that will allow us to interact with the omdb API. Okay. So in here we're going to first load the Jquery library, right? So this is script source, and we're going to go I think 3 times up, vendor. Do we have Jquery in here? Yep, we have Jquery. There it is. And we're also going to load the href, going up 3 times, CSS. Let's load the Bootstrap library. There we go. And this library is a style sheet. There we go. Excellent. So in here, let's lay it out, right? Same way we laid out earlier. So we're going to have a div, and this is going to be class. It's going to be a container fluid, and let's do the left-hand side. All right, so left-hand side that we had here was the search for the movies, right? Which is this implementation on the left-hand side, right? So first, let's do an omdb API. There it is, and let's lay out the left-hand side and the right-hand side using a row, right? That's going to have 2 columns. It's going to have column XX, and this is maybe 4. That's the left-hand side column, and on the right-hand side, we're going to have something similar, XS, and this is going to be 8, right? Now on the left-hand side, we have the search title, so it's going to have maybe H2, right? We're going to have an input field and a button, right? So let's have the input field here, and it's going to paint it as form control, right? And we're going to have a button right underneath. Right here is going to see the button, class, btn primary, and btn block. And this is going to have search. All right, so if we navigate to that right now, so it'll be, where is this? It's going to be in lectures, graduate, Jquery, omdb. All right, so it looks fairly similar to what we had earlier. We also need a results down below, so we're going to have maybe H2 results, and we're going to have a UL where we're going to render our line items. Yes, and this is going to be class li, right, and an li class list group item, and in here this is going to be the movie here, right, something like that. All right. Okay, so we have a layout. Let's now use Jquery to interact with this page. Okay. So So first of all, we're going to implement our code, in a local object, a file, JavaScript file, omdb JavaScript, like we did for Angular. Right? So let's grab that and let's implement it in the same directory that we're in. Right? So let's create in a JavaScript. Right? And in here, we'll still use the if pattern. And in here, there is no Angular. Right? There is no Angular. But like Angular, it declares a global variable. Right? Angular declares the Angular global variable. Here we declare the Jquery global variable. Okay? And the Jquery global variable allows us to, for instance, it's a function, right, that takes all sorts of arguments, and depending on what we pass, it behaves one way or another. Right? One common thing to do is to be able to grab elements from the page, right, and manipulate them. Right? So for instance, we can grab the body. Right? This string can be different things. Right? If you pass it a CSS rule, right, it treats it like a CSS rule. Right? It grabs. It understands that you're referencing something that is already in the DOM. Okay? And once you have it, you can then manipulate it. Right? For instance, you can say dot append, meaning I want to add the following contents to the body. Right? And you can say maybe hello from Jquery. Right? So if we re-render, it doesn't work. Wait, why doesn't it do that? Oh, I know why. What happened here is that it's trying to grab something that doesn't exist yet. Okay? Notice that if we go back to the HTML, notice where omdb.js is. See that? Right? omdb.js, it's this one, right? omdb.js. Wait, is this in the right place? Uh-oh. Am I in the right place? Jquery. Yes, I am. But let me make sure I'm in the right place. Alert, hello. Yes, I'm in the right place. Okay. So what's happening is that the HTML, notice where the script is. See that? The browser hasn't yet parsed the rest of the document. So by the time this executes, right, the body doesn't yet exist. Right? If we move this down here, and we refresh, notice it says hello from Jquery. Right? It adds it to the body element. Right? But even though it's a good practice to put it at the bottom of the body, right? It's much easier to read it up here. Right? So, but it doesn't work now. It doesn't work. Right? Because the element hasn't yet been, the DOM doesn't exist yet. Right? So to deal with these kinds of things, what Jquery can do is register a function. You can register a function that will be invoked once the DOM has completely been created. Right? Once the browser is done parsing the HTML, right? It can notify Jquery, say, hey, I'm done. The DOM is ready for you to manipulate, to do whatever you want. Right? That function can have any name, right? But a very common name is to call it init. Function init. Right? So in here, we can now put it in here. Now by the time it gets here, the DOM has already existed. Now the body element does exist, right? And we can now manipulate it. So we go back and render. Notice that indeed now it works. Okay, everybody okay? All right. Now, since I'm very lazy and Jquery is such a long word and it has a capital Q, there's an alias that I can use that is for Jquery, right? It's a shortcut, and this works just as well. Right? And in documentation on the web, you'll find $ used all over the place. Right? It's just an alias of Jquery. Right? All right, but this is not what we really want to do. What we want to be able to do, right, is grab these two elements here, right, the input and the search box and the search button, right, and do our search, run our search. Right, so let's do that. So we're going to grab the input field input field using Jquery. And so we need something to grab that element. We could grab it by its name, input, but there might be more than one input, right? So to be more specific, we could grab and add an ID to this and say this is the title, right? Title, and we can grab it. One good thing is to use the same name on the HTML as you would use here. So I'm going to grab something that has the ID title field. See that? That's a CSS rule. That's a CSS rule. It says, "Ooh, you're referencing something on the DOM." I'm going to give it back to you. There it is. Now you have an object representation of what's in the DOM. Okay? Let's grab the button as well. Let's grab an ID. This will be search button. So we can say var search button, and let's retrieve that also by ID. You can use dot, star, hash, everything that is a valid CSS rule. You can put it in here, and that's what the CSS rule does, right? It refers to different portions of the document, and that's where Jquery gets its name, right? It's a query, you know, like a SQL query. A SQL query queries tables, right, based on a where clause. Here, Jquery is querying the document, right? A SQL query retrieves records from tables based on some where clause. Here, Jquery retrieves data from a document, right, based on some search criteria, right? That's where it gets its name. All right, so I have both, and once I have them, these are not just plain old DOM elements. They're very powerful DOM elements now because they have been fetched with Jquery. Jquery adds additional behaviors to the raw JavaScript behavior. It adds additional behaviors to it. Okay, so if I can, for instance, say if I can click a button, I can generate a click event as if I would have clicked it myself with the mouse. Right? It'll behave as if it were just clicked, just like that. Or if I pass a function like handle search button, okay, right? It will invoke that function once you click on it. So no arguments, you are generating the event. You pass an argument, it treats it as a function to call it, right? So we can then generate here a function, okay? Actually, we can here it is. Will be called here. So console log, and then we can put the search handle. So if we do this and we click on it, we can do the console and see that indeed we are generating. So if I click on it, notice it generates it several times. Everybody okay? All right. The next thing is that what we really want to do is grab the field. What this field is in there, right? We can grab the title, var title, from the field, and we can get the value of that field. Yes, and then we can just display the title that we're looking for. Yes. So we refresh and we click something. Notice that it's being added there. See that? Right, so we're grabbing it. Notice there's no magic here, right? There's no models. It's all very raw, right? Very, very low level. Okay. But this is what Angular uses underneath. It just hides it under, using a very thick layer of abstraction, right? That forces you to think in objects, right, and events happening between these two. All right. So what we really want to be able to do is query this. Query this these objects. Well, we want to look at the network here. And if we search this, let's look at the query here. Let's copy this query from headers. That's the URL we want. So let's generate here a URL that is going to be that string. And this is going to be the title. Right, the title. And there it is. We have the URL. We can use that URL to generate an AJAX call, right, a network call. We can say .ajax, right? And pass the URL that we want to connect to, and a function to render our response that comes back from the server. Right? We can do render movies, right? In a function that is called the same name, render movies. Right? This is going to be our response. Okay, and then we can just render it. We can say console log response. Notice there's no model.movies that we can pass it along. There's no abstraction there, right? You have to do that by hand. So we get the response. So let's see what comes back. No, not that. It's this one. And so we say Batman search. Notice that indeed we get the same array we got earlier, right? And there it is. Okay. So we're going to have to iterate over that array, right? And actually create the DOM elements that we're going to put inside of the DOM, right? So let's do that. So we got the response. We have to grab that UL, right? And here we created a UL, right? And it has we can give it a name, an ID that says movie list, right? So we can grab that var, the movie list. We can grab it from Jquery with the ID. We have the list, right? We can iterate over the response, for var m in response.search. Right, response.search is the actual array of the movies, right? And we can grab each movie one at a time from the response.search sub m. Right, so we got that. We need to create li elements for each movie, right? And then add them, right, to the DOM. Right, so let's do that. Let's create a brand new li. Right, there it is, li. Notice that here is with a pointy bracket, so it understands that you're creating a brand new element as opposed to referencing something that already exists in the DOM. I'm creating a brand new element here. And I'm going to add the class list group item. Very good. Okay. Once I have the line item, I can append the title of the movie, right? So movie.title, right? So now this is an li whose text element inside has the title of the movie. And once I have the line item, I can add it to my movie list. I can append it. It's a movie list.append again. Right, the li. Okay. Since the movie list is already in the DOM, this actually adds the li to the DOM, right? Because the ul is already in the DOM. This one doesn't add it to the DOM. See that? It only creates it in memory, right? It has a memory, an object li in memory, but it hasn't been rendered yet. Not until I append it to something that is already on the page, right, will it actually be rendered on the page. Okay, so let's try that. All right, so we say Batman search. Notice that it adds all the content. Batman Begins, Batman, and so on and so forth. And we can do the same thing with the images, right? We could create an image here, var img, create a brand new image, img, whose source is equal to let's see, it's it will be the movie dot poster, right? Poster, right? I think that's it. And we need the width to be 50 pixels, right? And the li, we're going to append first the image. We're going to append first the img node, and then we're going to append the title. Okay, let's see what that looks like. If we have a Star Wars, right? It adds the Star Wars with the images. If we start Star Trek, notice that it looks like it didn't work, but actually added at the bottom. See that? That's because we just keep adding things to the DOM, right? We might want to, when we get the list, we might want to. Yeah, you have a question? Okay. We could just empty it out before we start adding things. Right? Every time we render the movies, we can just remove what's in there. Just do an empty. Right? Just remove what's there. because I'm about to just fill it up again, right? So if we do a Shrek, right, it returns, it adds those. Or if I do avatar, right, it removes what's there in the DOM and just re-renders it. Make sense? All right. There's plenty more of jQuery. We'll talk a couple more things. You know, we'll play around with the rendering on the right-hand side later on Monday. But this is plenty, right? And I encourage you to look at the documentation in jQuery, to understand some of these functions. But this is plenty for now. All right.